the overreactions. It's going to be Nick's
we'll
first
have plenty,
game.
Mike. We'll have plenty.
I mean, it's literally his first game, and he's going into the Hawks' nest.
All right, Mike, you might have thought that something happened in Denver, something so miraculous that every Denver Broncos fan has completely turned the page on the program and think they might even win the division. That's basically what I'm hearing from Broncos fans is like just absolute, outright, like optimism on the season after Bo Nix is named officially QB1. After that, I think Zach Wilson got the number 2, and then Stidham did you hear his post, like his reaction video to like being told that he was not going to be the starting quarterback? Not happy, right? So, anyways, Bo Nix, your starting quarterback. How do you feel about the Broncos going into the start of the season, Mike?
Cautiously optimistic. They're cautiously optimistic. The reason why, I'll tell you. The 2021 preseason, the Broncos absolutely eviscerated their opponents. Bridgewater and Locke both looked like world beaters. The Broncos started that season 3-0, and then the wheels came off. Like, it's just too early to say. But I will say this, and I'm not going apples to apples on that. It's not the same thing. Bo Nix has looked good, and he's passing the eye test probably more than Locke or Bridgewater did in 2021. Although I do remember Locke making some beautiful throws against the Vikings in that preseason game too. Had like a perfect passer rating. That's why I'm not like eager to jump on and say that Bo Nix is going to be the next big thing in the NFL just yet. With that said, Dirk, I think people were a little bit too low on the Broncos depth chart because they don't have a lot of star power on there. That doesn't mean that they didn't have good players on the defense. You got to remember this team was 8-9 last year, and they did blow some winnable games. I mean, the Patriots game on Christmas Eve was completely inexplicable. Completely ruined Christmas, by the way. How did that happen? How did you lose that game? Yeah, I mean, if you look at a couple of things down the stretch, Denver, I mean, really, Wilson made a bad decision against the Texans on the road. Probably should have won that game in Houston. If they win that game, they're probably a playoff team. We also might not be talking about Bo Nix if that had happened. So everything happened the way it did. I'm just saying that Denver brought more back than people realized last season.
I'm telling you, I'm giving them 5 max wins. That's my ceiling on this team. I don't think they win more than 5 this year. I've seen a lot of people go as high as 9, and I think that's just crazy to me. I mean, you have a lot of pieces that were in that puzzle last year that just aren't there anymore, Mike. And, you know, the departure of Simmons is I think, bigger than people will give it credit for. You now have, 2 new safeties that you're dealing with in the secondary. Yeah, you still have Surtain and whatnot, but, you know, I'm still wondering about the holes on the defensive side. But then also, look, I'm not impressed by the Broncos offense. And Bo Nix, yeah, he looked good in those preseason games, but most of those games at that point, you're not playing against the number 1 guy. So I'll be cautious with you. I'll be willing to change my 5 projection if they win a very winnable game against Seattle. Seattle's a pretty good bellwether of how the rest of the season's going to go. If they win that game, I think you could say maybe 8 wins, 9 wins. But if they don't win that game, 4 is tops, 4 or 5.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's week 1. There's always the overreactions. It's going to be Nick's
we'll
first
have plenty,
game.
Mike. We'll have plenty.
I mean, it's literally his first game, and he's going into the Hawks' nest. I feel as though, look, man, I think honestly, as you look at Denver, Simmons as a loss is legit, but PJ Locke played pretty well at safety when he was healthy last year. Secondary is sort of reloading. You also have to look at this. Denver feels good enough about its wide receiver situation to cut Tim Patrick free. And so that means they feel very confident in the young guys. You feel confident.
Or is that
Mims,
just like cutting your losses where you haven't had a guy play in 2 years and realizing, he never came back to 90% of what he was?
Everything I heard was that he looked pretty good. And I mean, he did look decent in the preseason. So I think there may be some cost-saving measures with that. But at the same time, I think it's also a sign of confidence that Denver likes what they have with the young receivers. And so I think there may be more talent at the disposal. Again, a big question mark. And this, you could say that this position, ever since Owen Daniels was on this team, is going to be tight end. Or if Dulcich can stay on the field and is healthy, you have a guy who in theory can stretch the field and is a big receiving target. We've seen it for about...
Dulcich is not going to be in the top 15, Mike. Cute or tight end 1 this year, McBride. Hands down. I think he's going to be the top tight end in the league. Dulcich won't break 15.
It's hard to say. I mean, you just don't know. The guy has not been healthy at all the last 2 years. When he was healthy, it looked like he had signs of potential as a game changer.
That's not a position I want to have someone that we're questionable about being healthy. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's just it, though. When you have that much potential and it's just never been there throughout the career.
Reminds me of Jake Butt.
Well, that's exactly right. Jake Butt's a good example. Hireman, Noah Fant, Albert O. All of these guys were so injury prone that it was just impossible. But in theory, if Dulcich is healthy, the talent is there. I don't know, Derek. It'll be interesting. I'm with you. I mean, I'm cautious on where I go with the Broncos. I think you've got to give September, early October, a fair amount of time to settle in. I don't think they're a playoff team, given that it's Nick's first year as a starter, but you never know. I mean, if he exceeds expectations, they might be in the mix. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but they might be in the playoff hunt, and that's all you could ask for with a first-year rookie.
Here's what I'm going to say. Most optimistic part of the whole entire Broncos team is the connection between Bo Nix and Franklin. If that is established and you see Franklin over 700 yards on the season, I think you actually have a pretty decent hope for the future. If that doesn't pan out, you've seen a lot of these, between, Burrow and Chase and others that have done this type of setup where you're pulling in wide receivers. How even Carolina's interested in pulling Bryce's old teammate back into the mix, right? If they can establish this connection, I think there's a lot more at play because you can't put everything on Sutton. Sutton right now is you might as well cloud cover this guy until someone else is proven.
I think you're going to see the young guys step up into that position. I do think that will go well for the Broncos. But the question remains, how many times will we see Thunder run around on the field? How many times will we see the Broncos actually, restore that mile-high glory? It's to be seen. I mean, like I said, cautiously optimistic, but I'm not writing this team as being back just on a preseason. Yeah. All right.